everyone. Welcome. As we closing out Women's History Month, we got a really good surprise for you all today. A movie that's hot off the press, as they say. So we want to thank you for coming back to another episode of Conversations with Beloved and Kindred. As always, I'm Dr. Grace D. Gipson, Assistant Professor of African American Studies at Virginia Commonwealth University.
And I'm Dr. Kaniqua Robinson. I'm an Assistant Professor of Anthropology at Furman University.
All right. So today, what is this hot off the press that we're talking about? Well, we are talking about the latest film, which recently dropped as on Friday, March the 18th, on Prime Video, called Master, directed by a newcomer. I think she's a newcomer. I'm going to say that. Mariama Diallo, and starring Regina Hall. And let me just put out here, this is a total shift from Regina Hall that we're normally used to seeing. So this was a true delight seeing her in this particular role. So I'm gonna just dive right on in. And Dr. Robinson, tell me, what were your initial reactions and feelings about Master?
I think it really goes back to why I like horror anyway. Like, you know, this idea of horror as more than just jump scares and, you know, fear. It's about what story is it telling? And the first time I saw it, I was like, ooh, too much. This is too much. This is too much. And it wasn't that, again, fear like someone's going to come out the closet or anything like that. Wow. But it was that, oh, this is a unique way of telling the story of the Black professor and Black student on predominantly white campus.
Yes. Ooh, so for me, I think the initial was the title, because I immediately was like, Master. Okay, what is this going to be about? I'm already kind of like on edge right here with this title. But then watching it, there was like many moments of uncomfortableness. But I think it was a good way to kind of push, you know, the thinking and to push the subject. It was very relatable. I mean, with both of us being, you know, Black female professors at institutions that are not necessarily HBCUs, or mine's not. So, so, you know, being in spaces where we're, you know, mostly white spaces, and we are Black women, not just Black professors, but Black women professors,
right.
And junior faculty at that. So lots of different factors here. It also made me think about the creativity of horror, you know, kind of like you said, like, you know, it's definitely not this jump scare, but it's a jump scare in the sense of like mentally getting you and get into your head, and you're like, this is scary because it's real.
It was almost triggering, like, I know what you feel, like, you know, first being a student and then being a professor, being like, oh, I can see from both angles. What does it mean to be the only one like you in the space?
Yes.
What does that look like? Now, we can talk about it every day, you know, the microaggressions versus the macroaggressions.
Right.
But this film really encapsulates this microaggressions that we experience. So yeah, and like, you know, we talked about what does white privilege look like on this level?
Right.
How is that articulated? How do we feel it when it happens?
Yes. And as you said, we've talked about this, and we, generally speaking, not on this podcast, but in conversations, people outside of, you know, this world or whatever, have been talking about, you know, Black women in the academy or Black students in the academy. But I don't think we've seen it showcased in this kind of filmic format. I mean, there was a kind of minority women in the academy with the Netflix series, The Chair, but like there was parts of that I was like, I get that, I can relate to that. But this was, I relate to it as a student and as a professor, and I was like, okay, y'all got me with this.
Exactly. So I can definitely see that, where it's like, you know, being this token.
Yes.
What does being a token mean, and how does that play out? And we're going to go into detail about this, of course.
Right.
But I think, you know, like I was saying before, this trigger of like, oh my gosh, when we would see things like in the library, when someone, first of all, and I don't think it's just, you know, Black people, I don't know, but you know how when we go to stores and they have the metal detectors or whatever, the siren thing, we always get a bit nervous that it's going to go off.
We do.
Like it's a little fear, like, oh my God, it's going to go off. And then, you know, what does it mean if it does go off? Does that mean
Right.
like, oh, it may have been a misunderstanding?
Yes.
Or could it be something more intense? Are you going to call the police when it could have been a mistake? And you're
Right.
talking about in the library.
Right.
So in these spaces, they're supposed to be sanitized of such racial injustices, then become a part of the same racial injustices we experience outside the academy.
Yes. So it was a very timely, movie that's coming out, especially with everything that's going on. We're talking about critical race theory, which we all know is a very unique conversation, because some of the conversations are kind of like, y'all don't know what y'all talking about, but that's a whole nother podcast episode. So, but considering the time that we're in, considering this is Women's History Month, considering what, we have a potentially, and I'm going to claim, first Black female Supreme Court justice that's, coming in here, the hearings are just beginning. So it's like a lot of stuff is happening as this film is coming out to really kind of bring attention to things that have already been discussed. But it's like, let me remind you again, let me bring it back to the fold, bring it back to the center. So
I want to add to that. One thing I like about Master and even, so many different things going on is how we are highlighting Black women.
Yes. Yes.
Like we're emphasizing Black women. Now, usually, when we talk about the Black experience, Black women are a part of it, but we're in the side. So now, not just Master or, there have been other movies before, but we see like now we're going to have a Black woman,
right,
a Supreme Court justice. We see a Black woman leading a movie.
Right.
And it's like, and really talking about the Black woman experience, not just leading, but also explaining or showing the experience.
Yes.
And this amplification of the Black woman experience, to me, is very exciting, especially we see the change in the academy itself. You see it in social media where it's like, oh, we've always been here doing the work.
Right.
Now you see us in the forefront.
And it's like we're being heard, because that's the other thing that we're always constantly talking about, is like whether or not our voices, our stories are being heard and then being told by a Black woman. So everything is kind of like, yes, we're doing this. Thank you. All right. Finally.
That Barbara Smith and Audre Lorde dreamed of when they came up with the Combahee River Collective Statement. It was like, we can speak for ourselves.
Right.
We can do this. And so you see from the 70s to 2022, we got a voice.
Indeed. So, each episode, I feel like we're really seeing the creativity of horror and the sophistication of horror as a genre, and that, Blackness and horror really has this very ongoing relationship, and really needs to be a continuous part of, when you're talking about horror, you need to make sure that Blackness is always included in the conversation. And so each of these films that we've been talking about, I really am seeing even more and more so how they contribute to the genre. So
exactly.
Yeah. So we've definitely talked about how, early on, how the film is definitely calling out white privilege. It's, speaking to racism on the college campus, antiquated traditions, this refusal to change and revise, and definitely exploitation of Black women from, various levels. And that's all throughout. Like, these are things, and there's several more, but those are like 4 key things right there that we see.
Those are the themes.
Yeah, huge themes. So let's start with this idea that this film is really kind of centering, it could be argued 3, but for the sake of argument, I'm going to say, it's the point of view of 2 Black women, 2 different perspectives that are being kind of showcased or highlighted or centered.
But it can argue 3.
It could be argued 3.
It could be argued 3. It would be a weak argument if you argue it.
Yes.
But you could argue 3.
And we'll get to why that third potential, very thin line argument of a third one will come. That will come. Trust me, we got y'all. But so let's start with Jasmine, who is a new freshman. She's at Ancaster College in Massachusetts. And so I'm familiar with a little bit, and I'm sure you are too, with kind of these very white-led old as history institution, not old as history, older than people alive.
Right. Because
Twice over.
These are historically white institutions, not just predominantly, historically white.
Yes.
And that is key, because when they began, we were not allowed.
No.
And so
we were not even a part of it.
Not even a part of it. We were not part of the actual academic. We were part of the building, literal, like building, bricklaying, construction, but never part of the academy at these historically white institutions.
Yes.
And so we see what happens even in this film. We see the Black girl coming to this, because let's go back. When you think of integration, what integration looks like, it was never all Black people in mass going into academic institutions.
Right.
White academic institutions. It wasn't like, oh, we got millions and millions are now coming into these universities. It has always been a select few.
A trickling.
You said what now?
A trickling in.
A trickling in. And so even at Ancaster, you have Jasmine, who was a valedictorian.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you still have a select few coming in to these institutions, and Master was not set in 1902. It was set today.
Right now.
Right now. This was this morning. Okay. It was set now.
Yep.
And so again, you see when we think about integration on campuses, it's trickling. Like you said, it's like, so now you have Jasmine there. The first day we saw maybe a couple of Black people, maybe on Ancaster. I think it was just her and this one other Black woman.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that was interesting about her was she being the only Black student that we see encountering these white, students who are giving the tour of the campus, of course, from their own perspective. Right. Where were her parents?
Yes. And just to be a little petty, where was the rest of her luggage? Because she had one large suitcase and her backpack.
Right. Are you spending the night? Or are you going to stay here for years to come?
Because I recall when I moved in my freshman year, I had way more. I had a van full of stuff, not just one suitcase. And my mother, my uncle, my aunt were with me.
Right.
So this was not a solo experience, although it must be noted that yes, not everybody is afforded that privilege. Because when I think about it, I'm like, that is actually a privilege that my family was able to come with me. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But nonetheless, you mentioned she was valedictorian, and grew up in the suburbs. So I'm trying to understand. So where was somebody to come with her? Maybe not parents, maybe friend. Like a friend, somebody.
My godmother came with me in a van, and we drove to school together. Yes. Well, not together. She drove me, but no worries how we got there. We got there together. Thanks. And so, like, even at these moments, she's already starting alone. And by coming with this one suitcase and this one other bag, are you not intending to stay?
Right.
Are you foreshadowing your own end?
Maybe.
Because she came with 3 clothes, and that was the movie.
Yeah, she came in alone and she left alone. So, so you have, and then also something to point out, which, and I know we're going to probably talk about it a little later, but I got to just go ahead and pull it out. Her hair. So one thing, I immediately noticed was she had very, curly pattern hair. People have to school me. What is this, 4C, 4A? I never get it right. But it's one of those, that she had her hair was in a natural state.
Yeah.
And so, but you would see, quickly that natural state became a very straightened state. And a part of me was trying to understand, like, okay, is this to fit in? Is this to be accepted? There was various things, because you got also Regina Hall's character, who is name is Gail Bishop, has a full natural hair all the way throughout. And so, we even see the way in which Black hair is presented, in these different ways through the women, these Black women that are being centered and highlighted.
Exactly. And so even with her hair becoming straight, you can tell, like you said, this transition to try to belong. Right. But then you realize you would never belong in this way.
Yeah. regardless if you change your hair or not, like
Doesn't
you're
matter.
still seen in a particular way. You're still, you know, people will see you still the same way, regardless of how your appearance
You
looks.
just have straight hair. And
Mhm.
so it's this illusion that your hair will make you something different.
Right, right.
But it doesn't make you belong, because if someone wants you there, they will welcome you the way you are,
Regardless.
regardless.
Yeah.
And so even this hair change really does make a difference, because you know, black hair symbolized black in this movie.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so even with the third iffy person, she had braids. And you know, we'll talk about the iffiness in 2 seconds, but when she had the braids, so it's supposed to be she's black.
Right. Yeah.
So
But yeah, so and then we have, like I said, Regina Hall's character. Her name is Gail Bishop, who is the first Black female master at Ancaster. And so prior to watching this, there was an article that came out in the Chronicle of Higher Education, where Mariama Diallo is interviewed about the film, and she spoke to the history of the term master. So, you know, for those that may not have known, this movie is very much, you know, could be translated to Diallo's, you know, going to Yale and her experiences. So much of her experience is definitely translated in this film. And she mentions how, which this, like, I had to catch myself, like, she said 2016 was when they removed the word master and changed it to being head of college. It was replaced in 2016.
yesterday.
2016.
Yesterday.
And so I'm like, it's just 2022. You mean to tell me they were still holding on to this term?
Antiquated traditions,
you know, and not wanting to change. And nobody thought that this was a problem. But Diallo speaks to this in her interview, where she even says how it was so kind of like a part of the system, a part of the narrative, that once she kind of reflected back, that's when it kind of clicked, like, oh, dang, wait a minute, this is problematic, you know. And like, maybe we shouldn't be in the fact that she remembers even using the term, you know. And I'm just like, oh my God, I can only imagine, you know, I mean, I went to an HBCU for undergrad, so we weren't calling nobody master.
I mean, I went to Florida State, and it was pretty much residential, RA, what's the A? Residential, whoever.
Assistant. Yeah.
Residential assistant. But it was never that.
Like, you weren't getting me to call nobody no master. That was not happening.
What was key about her realizing that is sometimes what happens when you're undergrad, you first go to college.
Yeah.
Or, you know, when you start to reflect back on your older educational institution, even I would say even post-college, postgraduate, everything, you reflect on what you've been through, and you're like, wow, I can see how indoctrination happens in the school. I can see how racism become normalized and how I repeat it. Because sometimes, you know, we're educated in these particular institutions. And so it's very difficult for us to see outside of it if this box has been placed on us.
Right.
So I see even now, like, some people getting enlightened, like, wait, like I told you before, when I had to pick cotton in elementary school, like, what?
Yeah.
I didn't even think about it until a couple of years ago.
Right.
We don't think about it that way, but it's great that, you know, she made that statement.
And then it goes back to something you just said. You said earlier about, oh God, don't lose the grace, don't lose the grace.
Got it, it's there.
So we, you know, talking about normalization of the term, you know, we're talking about, you know, the fact that many of these institutions are historically white. And so if you think about that idea of being historically white, nobody would have ever said there was an issue with the term master, because that was just kind of like what it was. So it's not until students like us come into these white spaces that it's challenged, that it's, you know, we're pushing up against it. But beforehand, there's no reason to push against it.
And then we go through this whole concept of it is what it is. No, it's not. It is what we made it. Like, I really don't like it is what it is. It isn't. It doesn't have to be. We created it. So it's not is what it is.
Yeah.
But again, these traditions become, you know, enshrined in the institution. And so there has been a constant change, particularly since the murder of George Floyd, where you see academic institution makes a change.
Yes.
Because academics tend to, react to society as such. And so we see how this has been this complete reformation almost of some academic institution as a result of George Floyd.
Right.
And the Black people calling it out, saying we need to do something about it.
Exactly. So we see this disruption, that is being kind of told through this lens here. And so we also can even think of the idea of master, obviously it's attachment to, those who have been enslaved, and this idea of like mastering something. And so that's something that, probably people think maybe not less of, but don't, automatically quickly think of. Because I know for me, when I saw master, the first thing I thought of was slavery. And
like I don't
controlling.
But we speak from our social position as Black women.
Exactly.
So see it different, like, oh, master what?
Right. But then at the same time, the fact that as Black women, we have to master so many different things in order to even be seen, in order to even be a part of the discussion. So it's almost like, why not think about it as this idea of mastering something? So yeah, it's a very complicated, triggering thing that's happening here. So yeah.
That was a nice way of spinning that. But when I saw headmaster, it was like, no. And then, you being called as a Black woman, master.
Yeah.
No, you will not call me master. What you will call me is Dr. Robinson, the head of this college.
It's the same way when my students call me ma'am, and it's like, not yet. No, not yet. Not yet.
Not yet. And we're good with that.
Right. Professor, doctor.
Anybody, instructor, ice cream truck, whatever. But ma'am, just hold on a minute.
So yeah, so we definitely, like I said, we're seeing this idea of this first Black master, the fact that it's a Black woman, this idea of her being told welcome to the club, which I don't think she's ever really welcome to the club, even though it's been said to her, but there's never a welcoming. If you notice, nobody really welcomes her into this position. It's kind of just like, you're here it is.
No one even helped her get in. No one was like there to say, here's the areas that you want. No one helped her with that transition. Just like with Jasmine, she showed up, there was no one to help her.
None. And so it's kind of like you having to operate on your own. So when people wonder why Black women are so independent in their thinking, is because many times we've been forced to have to do that anyway. And so it's not that we're not wanting to ask for help or get help, but we've so often not had it that we operate in a way in which we don't expect it. So when it does come, we're sometimes even a little hesitant to take it, or we're just kind of like, we don't know what to do with it.
Right, because we're usually the helpers, not the helped.
Yeah.
So it's like, kind of, how do we deal with being helped? And what is that helping tied to if we were to receive it? So yeah. So cool. So let's go back to Jasmine a little bit here. And so this idea of thinking about Black students in white spaces. So we talked early on about her experience in the library. So we have the library and the cafeteria, in which kind of two different things, but two same things happen. Yeah.
So how about tell us about the library scene that really kind of like triggered for you?
Yeah, messed me up. So basically, she brought the books, check them out. Everyone loves libraries. Got to pick up one from the library, I forgot. Anyway, so, you have these books, and she's having to, like, I can't wait to check them out. The librarian rung her up, did all this stuff. She put her book back, and she went through the metal detectors or the detectors. And so it goes off. She's like, oh, let me come back. And so she gives the books to the woman, the librarian, said, okay, great. Matter of fact, let's go back. Before she even gets the book, she says something like, your family must be proud of you.
Right.
What microaggression is that?
And I know we've both had similar instances where someone has told us something similar, like, oh, your parents must be really proud of what you're doing, or that they must be so proud that this is, the career that you have. And you're thinking like, huh?
Like they're proud of me, absolutely, but that's a weighted statement coming from you.
Yeah.
It's weighted, and it's weighted with racism. It was not a genuine, we were not having a discussion about my past.
Right.
You just came out, I'm checking out books. Let me check them out.
Yes.
I must be so proud of you. Because that, you pretty much noting that, okay, she did not come from a suburban background. I want to use all my stereotypes that I know about Black people and Black women and place it upon her and make this statement.
Right.
So that was key. So that statement was made. Checked out the books, the metal detectors go off. She comes back to the librarian. The librarian, let me just do this. And she, make sure that the bars and everything, the barcode was whatever it was, whatever. And then she said, well, can I check your bag? Now,
me immediately would have been like, no.
Absolutely not. You would not check my bag.
And no. Like, no.
Like, you can't check your bag.
Like, no, you can't. Like, no, like, why?
What is about my bag that you want? But Jasmine, who doesn't know what to do with that is racism, she said,
wants to be accepted or wants to fit in.
Accepted. Because I think her hair wasn't straight then. It wasn't straight yet.
I don't think so, no.
Mm-mm. And so she gives the book bag to the librarian to look through.
Right.
That's something that I won't ever do. You would not look through my things, because then you are invading my privacy, because they are my things and you are not entitled to my privacy or my personal. So if you're invading my book bag, you're invading my personal, which you're, again, not entitled to. Now, I know your privilege may seem so, and your ideas of stereotypes of Black people may think that someone is stealing from a library. Right. But regardless, so she looked through it and she said, oh, there's nothing there.
Right. But did you think there was going to be something there? I mean, like, why?
What else did you want from me? And so then she walks off, Jasmine. Okay, this is what happens. Yeah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, but there's, I think, a level of naivete that is, happening there, because it's just kind of like she's naive enough to allow this lady to look into her bag, into her, cross the line of privacy, in essence here, and just allow her to do whatever. And it's kind of like, nah, that's not how this works.
And I also think she doesn't have people like her hanging out with her at this time. Yeah. She does not have a group who could support her if this was to happen. So it may have been a point of survival where she's like, look, I'm the only one here. And if anything happens, I'm the only one here. Right. I'm the only one in this environment. But again, I do think it's some naivete. I do agree with you on that, where it's like, she may not have noticed it as micro or macroaggression.
Exactly. And so then you have another incident where she's in the cafeteria, and there is a Black lady who's working behind. She's part of the food service, and who is laughing and smiling at all the other students. Hey, baby, come get you this. There you go. Very stereotypical of Black women in food service. And when Jasmine walks up, it's like silence. There's this immediate, smile gone. She's, mums the word silent, and almost even gives her this look of like, right. But, all kind of emotions of, what are you doing here? Who are you? Who do you think you are? Right. And I'm just kind of like, okay, now who is, I don't want to say the fool, but who's really, the problem now? Right. Like, Jasmine did nothing to you.
Exactly. But it goes back to being normalized to accept the situation. Right. Yes. You're used to only seeing white faces. And then you see this Black person, like, what are you doing here? Exactly. You're supposed to be here?
And not to keep throwing both of our experiences back, but I can remember going, and when a Black person saw me, it was like, hey, how you doing? It is so good to see you. Yes. What can I do for you today? Or I hope you have a great day. It was an encouragement. It was a motivation.
Yes. It's like we see you, even though there may be like an invisibility cloak around us. We see you. We're like, we see you, and we value you. So we in turn then reciprocate that. Hello, how are you doing? Exactly. And I think that's what was so different about Master to me when I didn't see that, because usually if it was a cafeteria, again, I went to Georgia State, but either way, if I went to a cafeteria and, I go to a predominantly white school, the cook would say, hello, how are you doing? I'm like,
right.
You want some extra? I do. Thank you.
Exactly.
I really do. I would like some extra things.
Exactly.
So like,
it's very different. And like I said, we went to two different type of institutions, but those same things happen at both. So it's this very, once again, historically white institution that is kind of like, it just, there's a shift here that not quite sure why that shift happens. Because I'd like to ask this lunch lady, did you have a bad day today? Is something wrong? Because why is it that you have like turned on me?
Yeah, but that would be so sarcastic if you did that.
I know. Yeah.
Like if so, the woman said, have the attitude like, did something happen to you today?
Yeah.
Are you okay? I just want to make that clear.
So, but yes, and then we also kind of see for both Gail and Jasmine a level of fetishization. I never can get this word right, but this fetishizing of them. So Jasmine as a very young, naive Black woman amongst fellow white students, so much so that she is even invaded physically, and then you have Gail, who is almost like, they're like, yes, you're the first Black master. Welcome to the club. And you bring this to the table, you bring that. And it's, or even having her look a certain way, act a certain way. And there's all these things that are put on her, but also things that they want to see through her because she is this Black woman. So different experiencing of this fetishization between both Jasmine and Gail.
Yeah, because they're the one here, so they have to carry the burden of all representing all Black people and being the lens through which these white professors and students see Black people and see Black. And that was the issue, even with Liv, because we introduced to Liv and how
who is Liv? Tell us about who Liv.
Are you all familiar with Rachel Dolezal? Just gonna ask you if you're familiar with her. So Liv was a professor. I don't even know her last name. She was tenure track when the film started. In the classroom as this Black professor, she was, Jasmine was in the classroom as well.
Right.
And when Jasmine would speak, it was almost like she would either speak over her or discredit her and focus on the white student in the classroom as well as in the office.
Yes.
And at that moment, I knew that something was wrong with this woman, because as a Black professor, it's important not only just for Black students, but all students to amplify their voices and not let them feel like they don't belong in the classroom. But Liv apparently did not learn that pedagogical skill. So, in these classrooms, when we uplift Black voices again, she ended up silencing her voice. And we know we have to be intentional about amplifying certain voices who are normally silenced.
Yes.
So Liv is close with Gail. Gail, for some reason, can't see anything, and she becomes good friends with Liv. And she'll go hang out with Liv when there was maggots in her house. And she said, Liv, can I, stay on your couch, whatever. Close friends.
Yes.
Turns out, one thing throughout the film, someone keeps calling Gail.
Right.
Like my daughter at the college, and Gail is like ignoring, which is, pretty much a symbol of this is a problem and you're not paying attention to it.
Right. It's kind of like the red flag that's like, hey.
It's like, hello, like I'm coming to your house. That's how big of a flag this is.
Right.
And so she ended up meeting with this woman who kept calling, and that was Liv's mother, who was white. And she said, my daughter is white.
Yeah.
And even have a white father.
Right.
So Liv, who performs Blackness with her attire, with her hair, she has her hair wrapped usually with some type of wrap on her head with braids coming down. A specifically Black style.
Right.
So again, Black is being acknowledged not by skin, but by style.
Yes. And performance.
And performance. And she performs Blackness, but from our position, we see that she wasn't performing well.
Right.
Gail was too busy trying to figure out masters. She wasn't paying attention.
Yeah.
So then at the end of the film, Gail confronts Liv at Liv's tenure party, because it was also a newspaper like Liv got like, she got tenure for diversity or something like that.
Yeah.
So Liv used her diversity to assist in getting tenure. The fact that she wasn't publishing in academic spaces, like, you know,
right.
books or journals, but she was an activist.
Yes.
For Blackness. And so she got tenure. Gail calls her out at her party. Very, like, not really call her out the way she should have. But then Gail got called, like, you know, hey, it's too much stress this semester. You're just stressed out. Because Gail also called other people out. But then again, it went back on the Black woman for being angry and, you know, stressed out. When it's like, no, her feelings were valid. So that is Liv. And that's why it's a weak third argument, if you say it was 3.
Yeah, I mean, so seeing her character made me think about other instances that have actually happened in the Academy, where there have been several white women posing as either Afro-Latina or Black or some person of color in order to project this agenda of allyship, of supporting, you know, the cause. And it's so troubling because you have Black and brown folks who are on the goal and who are on the tenure track, who are seeking to get this, who struggle with it, and who have to fight, you know, 3-4 times as hard as their white counterparts. And you have someone who is faking it. And being successful and receiving numerous awards and accolades. But they're not, this is not who they are. And it's troublesome because, you know, both of us who are tenure track, we're like, we can't do that. We don't have the luxury.
We can't do that. And then these same people who, you know, are Black and fighting for the cause, it's like, then move. Don't take up space. For someone who's BIPOC. Don't take up space then. If you're really for the cause, move out the way. And also, you can be an ally. You don't have to perform Blackness. You can just simply be an ally.
Exactly.
That could have very well got you tenure as well. But to perform and mock Blackness, you're mocking our culture in the very essence of our identity. Even in the film, when she decided to play, I think it was, I don't know, it was some like really, I don't know, it was like a rap song. In a very professional party, she performed or played a very unprofessional song. Unprofessional in the stereotypical or the traditional sense. And she played this song and she's like, hey, let them listen to some real music.
And you're like,
don't mock Blackness. Don't mock us now. Move out the way and let us be.
Yeah, it just, so once again, going back to your thought, it's a very weak argument to counter.
Very weak. Very weak. Very weak.
So it just, after you see the unfolding of her character, for me, there was a level of anger because I said, see, here we go. Another person alleging to be an ally, but for their own benefit, not for the benefit of the people that they're saying that they are allies for. And it is just like, once again, another opportunity snatched or taken away from someone, a space that you took that someone else could have had and probably would have been successful in you know, pursuing.
Exactly. Don't take
away the chances, you know, for whatever you were trying to prove, because there's an anger because she's holding resentment from something in her childhood. So, and thus that has carried on through adulthood into this position that she has at Ancaster. So you're like, so you got an issue at home. That's a home issue.
Yeah, she's like, I need a place to belong.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, you weren't good enough yourself, so you had to become Black to be good.
Which
so you can amplify
impacted Jasmine, who already didn't feel like she belonged.
So your mediocre nature that led you to perform Blackness hurt Black people. In the same vein that you're talking about diversity and we need to uplift Black voices while you're silencing other Black voices. And even making it seem like, helping to make Gail seem like she's just stressed out.
Exactly.
So many different things.
So when we go back, because I don't want to give Liv no more than what she is, should be given. So, so I want us to kind of go back as we, begin to think about some other thoughts and bring this all together. There's this idea of, the safety in the academy of Black faculty, staff, and students. And this is physically, mentally, socially. So when I'm saying safety, I'm not necessarily mean violently attacked in a physical way, but I'm also meaning safety as far as my job, safety as far as, being seen in these spaces that I'm working in. And then also this idea of having to wish that we could see more people like us on campus in various roles, not necessarily even just in the classroom, but those who are in all of the spaces on this campus, because we saw very few just Black people, let alone Black women, but Black people in these spaces. So
they were mainly the service workers or workers in service of the campus, like the landscapers, the cafeteria workers. They were mainly in service of the campus.
Yes.
That's the thing. It's like, when you talk about, it's not necessarily physical, but it could be.
Right.
It could be physical, but it's not just physical. It's everyday violence.
Yeah.
It's the mental violence. It's the psychological, abuse that happens. All these things cause, issues with Black people, BIPOC people on campus. Yes. Black women go through things from an intersection.
Sorry, could you say that again?
Right.
That was Siri talking.
Come on, Siri. Siri was with us. Yes, Siri. So even Siri knows that we deal with everyday violence in many different ways. And I love how this film talks about it, even with that witch.
So yes, this is where the actual, horror that maybe other people were wanting to see or looking for in this film comes in. So yes, tell us about these witches and tell us about that.
So the story is that this one room that the witch comes to, she kills everyone who's in that room, or she comes to the freshman who's in that room. She only killed Black people though. So the Black freshman in that room, the witch kills during the at 3:33 in the morning. No one contextualized why she just comes and kills people. No context. But she comes at 3:33, which is the witching hour, as we all know, the time when the devil
I'm just learning about.
It's the thing, like the witching hour. The devil works during this time, mythically, like fictionally. We don't know. 3 o'clock is a rough time. But either way, so this witch comes and she pretty much follows Jasmine around campus, right?
Yes.
She appears in the window and she follows her around campus. She has nightmares, but to keep in mind that these nightmares and even the physical or the perceived physical image or articulation of this witch is not just with Jasmine, but even the other woman of color, the other student, Black student, who was in the African-American house, said, I had those nightmares too.
Yep.
I have them as well. So you have the nightmares of racism, but now you have this witch, which is really racism physically.
Personified, yeah.
Personified, there we go, thank you for that. Personified. So this witch has followed her everywhere, led her to jumping out the window, It had affected her everything, because, she was being even lynched by the witch. Was the witch lynching her? Like it was
scratched up all over,
everywhere. So it kept plaguing her, even when she tried to navigate the institution with straight hair and whatever, racism was still there to, capture her, to attack her. And so at the end, the witch ended up killing her. Or no, she ended up committing suicide because she said, I know what I have to do. So she ended up committing suicide, which is what the witch wanted.
Right.
So now we have one less student. One less Black student.
There was already only so few. And now this one that there was this maybe hope of promise, is still taken out. And in a very, somewhat, I would say even violent way, because of, she tried once before when she jumped out the window and was not successful in that attempt. And then, the next time was like, okay, we're just going to use this noose, which the noose made an appearance earlier in the film. and it was ignored. So it's almost kind of like this was, that beginning moment here that nobody said anything and really, thought about this. And,
when do you feel loose and just be like, keep going?
Yeah.
Gail, where are you?
Yeah.
Gail,
it just
protect Jasmine. Where are you? You could protect Jasmine from this witch.
Exactly.
You could have.
And it just never happened. And it just was another thing that just kind of got brushed under the rug, much like so many other things were brushed under the rug. Some self-inflicted, some not so much, so yeah, you have, so there is the kind of like the literal horror of, the way that Jasmine is, unfortunately taken away. We also see the horror, and there were like several images that would pop up sometimes, like when Jasmine went to the library and one of the pictures showed like a skeleton face, and then there was also the horror of Gail seeing literal infestation in her home, behind in drawers, maggots coming from behind pictures and walls, seeing, mammy dolls and jars. And so there's a lot of artifacts.
Yeah, so many racial artifacts around campus. Because when we look at these pictures on the walls, these are not just pictures of, oh, these are just people who used to be here or blah, blah, blah.
Right.
They were slave owners.
Yes.
And so now we may see the physical picture of them, but she even started to dream or have hallucinations of enslaved women. And then see the picture of enslaved women. So yeah.
And and can't forget the burning crosses. So, it just, so I'm sitting there thinking, we in Massachusetts, but we still not far removed from the fact that that racism, even though people were escaping to places like the North in Massachusetts, to escape the South, that didn't mean that there weren't people who weren't racist as what we saw in the South, up North as well.
Absolutely not. Jim Crow was national. Don't sit here and think that it's just in the South. It was happening up North too with these people, with all these things going up North.
So we see the metaphors, we see the racial artifacts. It's very prevalent. It's very much, something that's ongoing throughout the film. So, it made me for sure, think about this idea of surviving and enduring. So I'm always having this idea of surviving and thriving, because I have to do more than just survive. I need to thrive as well. And so this idea of surviving and enduring that we see. And, just briefly touching upon, what does it mean to be a Black woman in the academy? So because, the title of the film is called Master. And, the key person here is Gail Bishop, who is master of this house or whatever college. And it was very much something that I began to think about, and even think about a lot now. It's like, what is my process going to be like? What am I going to have to endure? Or what am I enduring now? What am I going to have to do to make sure that I'm not that person who is, ignored or marginalized? What extra do I have to do? Because I know I got to do extra, and I think, where's my support?
Right. I think that's the importance. To me, this whole film showed the importance of having a community.
Yes.
Family, friends, colleagues, everybody. Like, you need a community. And one thing that we had an Association of Black Anthropologists mentorship meeting or a workshop. And they really talked about how we have mentors in different ways, like personal, spiritual, professional, all these different manners. But also it's about having a network of people who you can tap into when you need to survive and thrive.
Right.
So I think that's the one thing I saw in this film. When she died, her family didn't come to campus to get her stuff. It was them who packed her stuff up.
Right. And the labor of that. So the labor in which we as professors, take in to kind of assist students all the time, even in death, we're seeing this, and the toll that takes on us, and that we're having to, we become parents for some people, even though, that's not what we signed up for, but
Right,
it happens. We become social workers, we
Right.
become psychologists, we become
Yeah.
therapists. All of these things are, take part. And, like I said, are things that we didn't necessarily, like when we got our PhDs, that's not what we said we signed up for.
Mhm.
It was
I
to
think-
teach primarily,
It's always that. And I think part of that comes with the scholar activist nature of our work.
Yeah.
It's not simply just about protesting in public.
Right.
Sometimes it's about, protecting in the classroom and in the academic setting. Because, yeah, we are all these different things, and we see that as our duty as Black professionals, as Black women academics. We have, like, we said earlier, a particular position where we
Yes.
can see these things, because we've been through it. We're like, oh, I get what you're doing. I get it, but I'm here to help you, become more seen. And I think that's one thing I even see here, the issue with Liv and my issue with Gail, where it's like, when you come into this academy, and I'm not saying it is something that you're supposed to do, or that, well, I'm not saying you're required to do it, but if
Right.
you claim to be a scholar activist,
Yes.
part of your activism has to be to protect.
Right.
And to guard and to guide
Yep.
Black students to whatever they need, and they need to see you guiding them. So then when they're becoming this level, they will do the same. It's
Right.
about protecting and seeing our community in the future.
Exactly.
So
Yep.
we protect them now so they can do that to the next generation. That is part of our work, to see, just like Afrofuturism, we have to see ourselves in the future. So we
Yep.
have to plan for it today. And we
Right.
have to lay the groundwork, just like our mentors did for us.
We have to do
doing
the
it.
same for, yes.
We got to keep passing it forward so that we can remain here, and so that we can add more people into the institution as they see us here.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's, it's also too of a rewriting of script. So something that I noticed that both you and I do for our students that we didn't really see in the film is, we are making sure that our students are, getting from point A to point B.
Yes.
We are offering the support, sometimes more than we should, but,
Right.
but
Like, you're not going to walk by yourself on campus. That's what you're not doing. You're not doing that. I will find a friend, or I'll walk with you, but you're not going to walk by yourself on campus. That's not at night. During the day, do whatever you want to with Sunday. But at night, don't.
Definitely not.
That's a requirement to be my student. Don't walk at night by yourself unless there's some strong lights and plenty of people around.
Exactly.
Because
there's an investment that we have. And that investment, let's keep it real. Like, everybody doesn't have that same investment. Everybody is not there for the cause.
Right.
And whatever the reason is, I don't know, but like, I take pride in being there for my students. I take pride in knowing that my students feel enough that they can come talk to me. Even though sometimes I don't know what I can do, but I figure maybe if I can listen, that's something, that's a step, because as we see with Jasmine, there was no one she could talk to. There was no one that she could confide in. She even called home, but they ain't got an answer machine. So there was nobody.
Yeah, that's the thing. I want to know who your family is.
Yeah, I mean, it's important so that we don't continue in these antiquated traditions, so that students can feel like they are, accepted and belong, especially the belonging piece, because they are just as much entitled to get an education and be, scholars and activists as those who may have been here before they did. So
exactly. It's key.
Yeah. So you asked a question, in our kind of like green room, like, how do we endure? And, and you mentioned about the song from Nina Simone playing, I Shall Be Released, and how, it's interesting when this song is playing in the film. When is it playing?
When Gail leaves. Because the security guard who sees her and, asks her her ID, like, do you belong here? Of course, of course, we'll ask that. Why not? Just do it for funsies. And she said, no, I'm not, I don't work here.
Yeah, I'm leaving. Yeah.
And she leaves the campus. And then that's when Nina Simone song is playing. It's like, okay, well, bye.
Right.
And so in that is freedom, because she no longer has to be tied to this type of racist institution, you
Yep.
know, that Ancaster was, and she does not feel like performing anymore because this performance got her nowhere.
Exactly.
Yes, she was tenured, but what did that do for her spirit?
Right.
And she realized she didn't do her due diligence as a Black scholar activist, Black women scholar activist in protecting the student.
Right.
And if she didn't do that, it was like, well, what am I here for?
Yep. Because she makes two good points here at two different times. So one, when she tells Jasmine, you know, kind of like this reality of while Jasmine is trying to kind of navigate things,
Right.
you know, like it's not ghosts, it's not witches, it's America.
It's America.
And that line is going to forever stick with me because it's like,
Yeah.
It's not some fairy tale, it's not some ghost story. This is the real, it's life. This is real life, what's happening right now. It's America. And she's like specific with it. And she didn't even say it's life. She said it's America.
It's
so there's
America.
a specific pointing out of who and what it is.
And I think one of the things that I would say that was a problem with that,
Mm,
that statement was real. No
Yeah.
one's arguing with that. But in that, you have to give her hope that just because it is America, it doesn't mean we have to succumb to it.
yeah. So there
And
wasn't the what happens next part.
Right.
Yeah.
It wasn't the but that keeps us
Right.
in the future. In that film, we end.
Yeah. And it even ends with her, you know, with the walking off of campus and the feeling of like, y'all didn't want me here to be, you know, a Black master. You wanted me, as she said, to clean up the mess, to be
Right.
the maid.
I
So
wasn't the
no
master,
different.
I was the maid. I had
Yeah.
to clean up.
I was no different than any other Black person that you see as.
Right.
You
Right.
know, at this point, her degrees meant nothing because it wasn't about the degrees. It was about how can you fix this for us?
Like, it's not even about you being intelligent. We know what you are, whatever. But what we're saying is we need to deal with this, you know, issue. Can you come and clean this up and help us feel better? Actually, we need you to be the headmaster the one time we have another Black student here. So maybe you can protect her or make her, I don't know why it was just racism. But either way, I would have wanted more from Gail. I did want more from Gail.
Yeah.
And she realized she should have done more too. So
Yeah. And so, you know, in this moment, I just think that a movie like this continues the conversation. It offers us to talk about many of these feelings and thoughts that Black women, particularly in the academy, have. And it offers us a chance to be able to talk about it like in a space that we're talking about it now. And in a way, I'm given a sense of hope because people are hearing the frustrations, people are seeing them, and that it's like, so as you said, what do I do next now?
what do I,
Where do I go from here?
right.
And so that's kind of like the challenge that is given to me. Like, all right, so we know this is here. I've been able to tell my story. Now, what do I do with that? And how do I make sure that I get to still move forward and that it just doesn't end right here? So
I think that's the key. It's like, how do we preserve our existence in this institution?
Yep.
What do we need to do?
Woo. So, you know, you all, this film is one of those where I know I'm gonna have to watch it again because there's definitely some pieces and things that I need to, like, you know, walk through again and think through again. But nonetheless, excellent film. I am very much like, I want to see more of Regina Hall in these kind of characters again, because I was so used to seeing her in one way that this really, you know, gave some body to her work as an actress and as an actor. So any closing thoughts on the film?
Don't walk by yourself at night as a Black woman. Don't do that.
Well, really, just for anybody's safety. Like,
anybody, just don't walk in the dark. And another thing is, always tap into your community.
Yeah.
I know some people like to be loners, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But everyone needs a community. We're social beings.
Yeah.
We need a community.
It's really important, I think, for that survival and thriving and endurance. It's necessary. So yeah, very much so.
I think that's why I would leave with always tap into your community. Never leave your community behind, because we saw what happened to Jasmine when she left hers.
I like that. So know that there is always a community. It's just a matter of tapping in and finding your space and place within that community. So
Because you belong there just as much as anyone else.
That's right. That's
Mhm.
right. So, y'all, that was a good one. That took me there. That took me there. So we thank you for joining us again on this another episode of Conversations with Beloved and Kindred. We want you all to tune in next time because we got something else in the works for you. Not gonna tell you, spoil you, just got to tune in for the next time. But we hope you enjoyed this episode. Please let us know your thoughts. Give us your feedback. Give us what you think about the film if you've seen it.
Right,
And
right.
share that with us. So till the next time, we'll see y'all later.
Bye, everyone.